Hey guys, how's it going? Author Daniel Coolbaugh here. I just want to talk a little bit today about it's one of my favorite urban fantasy books. And I'll be honest, it's really the first urban fantasy book that I read. And then I also got to meet the author, so it's near and dear to my heart. And that is Hounded by Kevin Hearne. And I love this book. I've read the book. I listened to it again on Audible, and I'm about to do like a physical reread. Not with these ones though, because I actually met Kevin and he signed. I think he signed every book for me, but the last one because it was not out yet. And you can see like it's got some wear and tear ahead of time because I love these books. But the blurb for this is Atticus O'Sullivan, last of the Druids, lives peacefully in Arizona, running an occult bookshop and shape shifting in his spare time to hunt with his Irish wolfhound. His neighbors and customers think that this handsome tattooed Irish dude is about 21 years old, when in actuality he's 21 centuries old. Not to mention, he draws his power from the earth, possesses a sharp wit, and wields an even sharper magical sword known as Froggerock, the Answerer. Unfortunately, a very angry Celtic god wants that sword, and he's hounded Atticus for centuries. Now the determined deity has tracked him down, and Atticus will need all his power, plus the help of a seductive goddess of death, his vampire and werewolf team of attorneys, a sexy bartender possessed by a Hindu witch, and some good old-fashioned luck of the Irish to kick some Celtic arse and deliver himself from evil. If that doesn't get you involved right away from the start, I don't know what will. But you get right into it, and we meet Atticus's character. He's such an interesting character. He just wants to be left alone, to be quite honest. And he likes to help people through his shop. It's an interesting type of shop. And the kind of things he sells, that was really unique. Everything Kevin does in this book and series is unique, in my opinion. Does it amazing. This is one of my favorite representations of the Fae and of their machinations. Kevin just does an amazing job. I had to do so much research because I loved everything that he did. And I was like, wait, I didn't know that. And I had to look it up. I had to look up the story. I had to look it up. So I got really involved with researching the Fae, researching Celtic mythology. And my family's a pretty big percentage Irish. So like 45% on my mom's side. And then a little bit, I think it's like 20% on my grandmother's side, something like that. So quite a bit, right? So, and then we're like Clan O'Connell. And it's just interesting, right? So for me, it was really interesting to do the research and really get back to some of my family's heritage. My wife's family, they're like, I think 35% Irish. So my son's pretty, deep in Irish ancestry as well. So that was super cool. The gods and goddesses that he uses in this book are just really cool. He doesn't just use the Fae. Like all gods and goddesses, I'm going to spoil that. It's like 15 years old, something. It's 2011 as this was published. So it's more than that, right? So the gods and goddesses all exist. The more we believe collectively at this point in that deity, and there could be multiple, there's multiple Jesuses in here, there's multiple Thors, like depending on that aspect that more people believe in, that's going to give them higher power and more power magically, which was so interesting and does a great job being interesting in this book. He brings in, I don't want to give it away, he brings in some cool secondary characters like Kevin writes secondary characters, Patricia Briggs writes secondary characters, Jim Butcher writes secondary characters just so uniquely and in very, very, very interesting ways. And he just did an amazing job. So when they're talking about these other characters here, they are absolutely some of my favorite secondary characters of all time. We get to see some other characters as well throughout the series. Hexed and Hammered. For me, it's hard to choose between Hounded, which is book one, and then Hex, which is book two, and then Hammered, which is book three. It's so difficult for me. I go back and forth all the time. For me lately, I'm like, I think I liked Hex the most, but then I'll go back to Hammered and Hounded. But the first three for me, and not to say the other ones aren't fantastic, they are, but I read these right when I moved to Arizona, and Atticus's shop, his bookshop is actually in Tempe, Arizona in the books because Kevin used to live down there before he moved. And, it was so cool to go to his favorite restaurant, Rula Bula, get the fish and chips while I was reading the books. My wife and I, we just started dating. So, we went to a bunch of these places, she wanted to, she doesn't necessarily like urban fantasy, but she liked me, obviously married. But you know, it really came down to, you know, these books were an experience for me, not just reading them, but getting to go to those places. We went to Flagstaff, and he goes to Flagstaff at one point, and went to the diner in which Kevin wrote about. Got some, some inspiration from. So that was just really, really cool. So after this whole thing, I was waiting on the last book to come out, and I met Kevin. And man, was he amazing. Just a super, super cool guy. Met Brandon Sanderson the same night, Brian McKellen, Michael J. Sullivan, Patrick Rothfuss. I met so many people. Pierce Brown, he had just released Red Rising. And it was just really, really cool experience. And I went back 3 or 4 times through the line. I mean, guys, I was there at like 8 o'clock to a.m. to like, I think like 9:30 p.m. My wife had already moved back here to New York, Central New York, and my buddy was working, and it was one of the last few weekends that I was in Phoenix in Arizona before I was moving here for the summer and possibly moving permanently, which I ended up doing. And yeah, it was so cool to get to pick his brain and to talk to him and have him answer my questions. And everybody there that day was just amazing. Pierce Brown told me I might sell a few. So I laugh at that every time. I tell the story all the time because you never know, right? Like, you know, get your stuff out there. And it was just really, really cool to get to talk to Kevin. After that, I messaged him and I was like, hey, I'm thinking about writing urban fantasy. I'm switching from fantasy. For now, I had written a couple fantasy books and stories, rough drafts and things. And I was like, I just need a palate cleanser. So I was thinking about this because I told him, I was like, I love Hounded and I love Hexed and Hammered and everything he did with the series, particularly when it wrapped up. And yeah, I messaged him. I was like, hey, can you help me figure out how to research, you know, these historical and mythological things? And he gave me so many pointers and tips through several chats. And he was like, yeah, I'm here if you need me. And that's just like who he is. So I love seeing him be successful. And he's just a great guy, but man, an amazing author and creative. And, you know, I tell people like the books are a little bit older, you know, now 2011, you know, there's a lot of pop culture references and stuff. So, you know, if you don't mind, you know, having to look 1 or 2 up every once in a while, I would say in a book, you know, to kind of see what the joke is. That's how I feel about watching anything that was on USA back in the day, whether it's Psych or Suits or something like that. You know, they use those pop culture references. That's the only criticism I've seen people have. The magic system is really interesting. It's one of the most interesting magic systems I've seen personally, and particularly in urban fantasy, and just super, super cool what Kevin did there. So I highly recommend that. I love the world building. I love the different organizations that are involved. I love the cults and all the different things that he did with the world building. It felt like an urban fantasy version of Morrowind or Oblivion, and it was just super, super cool. So that's what I want to do with my own books. So highly recommend this series. I can't stress enough. I'm going to go through some of the other books as well. But I hope you guys have a great rest of the day. Please check it out. Please subscribe to this channel. And please check out my own stuff, www.authordanielcoolbaugh.com. I got a lot of stuff on there. I got a lot of stuff that's about to go on there as well. Hope you guys have a great rest of the day. And as always, happy reading, my friends. See you guys.